It was a typical Saturday morning. I was in the grocery store carrying my basket through the aisles when I noticed him. Marcus, my husband, was standing in the produce area with a basket full of apples. But he was not alone. Before we dive deeper into today's story, please hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber helps me continue sharing stories that inspire and touch your day. Next to him was a woman I'd never seen before. And between them was a young girl, no more than 5 years old, who called him Daddy. My heart has stopped. I stood there motionless as the scene unfolded in front of me. Marcus laughed at something the woman said, his hand resting on her lower back in a way that seemed all too familiar. The little girl tugged on his sleeve, pleading for a banana, and he looked down at her as if she were the center of his universe. I felt as if I were witnessing a movie. This couldn't be genuine, but it was, and it crushed all I thought I understood about my marriage. I did not confront him there. I could not. Instead, I turned around and abandoned my cart in the middle of the aisle, dashing out of the store before anyone could see me cry. When I came home, my mind was racing. How long was this going on? Who was the woman, and who was the tiny girl? Marcus returned home a few hours later, acting quite normal. He kissed my cheek and asked about my day as if nothing had happened. I wanted to yell and demand answers, but couldn't bring myself to do so. Instead, I smiled and said everything was good, but inwardly I was collapsing. That night, while Marcus was sleeping, I checked his phone. I've never done anything like this before, but I needed to know the truth. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. Texts, photos, even a calendar with a woman from the business. Her name was Vanessa, and the little girl's name was Lily. According to the messages, she is Marcus' daughter. The next morning, I had a knot in my stomach. Marcus had already left, leaving a note on the kitchen counter indicating he had an early meeting. I knew better now. I checked his shared calendar and discovered that he was going to have breakfast with Vanessa and Lily at a diner across town. My hands shook as I dressed and walked out the door. I arrived at the diner right as they were being seated. I sat in my car, looking out the window while Marcus left with Vanessa and assisted Lily in cutting her pancakes. It was like watching the perfect small family, one I was not a part of. I experienced a range of feelings, including rage, betrayal, and a profound, aching sadness. How could he accomplish this to me? To us? I waited until they had left the diner before following them. Marcus dropped Vanessa and Lily off at a little house on the other side of town and drove to work as if everything was okay. I sat outside the house for hours, trying to decide what to do. Finally, I gathered the bravery to knock on the door. Vanessa responded, her look changing from astonishment to suspicion when she noticed me. "Can I help you?" she said, her voice wary. I took a deep breath. "I'm Marcus's wife," I explained. My voice quivered. Vanessa's eyes widened for a minute. Neither of us spoke. Then she stood aside, gesturing for me to enter the house. Looked comfortable with portraits of Vanessa, Lily, and, to my horror, Marcus. There were photos of them at the park, on vacation, and at what appeared to be a birthday party. It was like entering an alternate dimension in which Marcus lived a completely different life. Vanessa offered me a cup of coffee, and we sat at the kitchen table. "How long have you known Marcus?" I inquired, my tone barely above a whisper. Vanessa hesitated before sighing. 5 years, she answered. "We met at work. He informed me that he was divorced." I felt as if the ground had been pulled out from beneath me. 5 years. That meant Marcus had been leading a double life for nearly half of our marriage. "What about Lily?" I inquired, my voice breaking. Vanessa gazed down at her hands. "She's his daughter," she replied gently. "He's been a part of her life since the day she was born." I wasn't sure what to say. My mind was racing as I tried to absorb what I had just learned. Marcus wasn't simply having an affair. He had an entire other family. He had been keeping his family from me for years. As I sat at Vanessa's kitchen table, my head was filled with questions. "Marcus, how could you keep this a secret for so long? How hadn't I noticed?" But before I could ask any further questions, Vanessa spoke again. "There's something else you should know," she replied, her tone cautious. She stood up and exited the room, returning moments later with a folder. Inside were legal documents such as custody agreements, child support payments, and even a will. My hands shook as I paged through them. According to the papers, Marcus had been financially supporting Vanessa and Lily for several years. He had even designated Lily as his beneficiary in the event of his death. "He told me you knew," Vanessa said, her voice filled with shame. "He said you two had an arrangement that you were okay with as long as he didn't bring it up around you." I felt a flash of rage. "That's a lie," I replied, my voice quivering. I had no idea any of this was happening. Vanessa appeared shocked. "I'm very sorry," she said. "I had no idea he was lying to both of us." We sat in silence for a long time, digesting the severity of Marcus' betrayal. Vanessa then said something that stopped me cold. "There's something else," she explained. "Marcus has been discussing leaving you. He stated that he wanted to be with me and Lily full-time." I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. Marcus wasn't only hiding a secret family. He intended to leave me for them. I wasn't sure what to do. Part of me wanted to face him, shout, and cry for answers. But another part of me understood. I had to be clever about this. If Marcus could lie to me for years, what else could he do? I chose to acquire proof. Over the next 3 weeks, I chronicled everything: texts, images, and bank records. I even hired a private investigator to look further into Marcus's secret life. What I discovered was surprising. Marcus was not only helping Vanessa and Lily, but he was also transferring funds from our joint accounts into a hidden savings account in Vanessa's name. But the biggest surprise occurred when the investigator discovered something I had never imagined. Marcus has another child, a son. I live in a distant state with another woman. It turns out that Vanessa and Lily weren't his only secret family. Armed with all of the information, I decided to confront Marcus. I waited until he returned home from work one evening. His normal, cheerful self, ignorant of the impending storm. I seated him down at the kitchen table with the packet of documents in front of him. "What's this?" he inquired. His tone was light, but his gaze was watchful. "Open it," I murmured. My voice was firm despite the rage building inside me. He stopped before flipping through the papers. His face turned pale when he understood what he was staring at. "Where did you get this?" he questioned, his voice raised. "I hired a private investigator," I said, "and I spoke to Vanessa Marcus. I know everything about her, about Lily, regarding your son in another state. I know you've been stealing money from us. I know everything." Marcus looked at me. His expression was a mix of shock and dread. For a little while, he said nothing. Then he began to explain, or rather, make excuses. "It's not what you think," he replied. "I never intended to hurt you. I got in over my head, and I had no idea how to get out. I didn't purchase it. You didn't know how to get out." I repeated, my voice quivering with rage. "You have been lying to me for years, Marcus. You've been living a double, no triple life, and didn't think it would damage me." He tried to apologize and beg for forgiveness, but I wasn't having it. "You don't get to apologize," I responded. "You can't act like a victim here. You made your decisions, and now you have to deal with the consequences." I informed him that I had filed for divorce and that I intended to take everything he had. He tried to reason and persuade me to give him another chance, but I was done. I grabbed a bag and departed that night, staying with a friend while I planned my future actions. The following few weeks were a blur of legal battles and mental misery. Marcus fought me every step of the way, but the evidence proved overwhelming. In the end, I received the property, the majority of our savings, and complete custody of our children. Marcus was ordered to pay child support and alimony, but I knew it wouldn't be enough to compensate for what he had done. The divorce was finalized 6 months later, but the emotional scars took far longer to heal. Marcus attempted to stay in touch, stating that he wanted to be a part of our children's lives, but I couldn't trust him. How could I? After all he had done, I set stringent boundaries, only allowing him supervised visits. Vanessa contacted me several times, apologizing for her role in the issue. She admitted that she had no idea Marcus was married when they first met, and by the time she found out, she was already in too deep. I didn't really blame her. Marcus lied to both of us. I focused on reconstructing my life. I returned to school and earned a degree in counseling so that I might help others in similar situations. It was therapeutic in a way, transforming my misery into something positive. My children were my rock throughout it all, and their tenacity and love gave me the fortitude to keep going. It's been 5 years since that day in the grocery store, and while the anguish hasn't totally subsided, it's become more manageable. I've learned to trust again, both in myself and in others. I've even started dating, but I'm taking things slowly. Marcus, on the other hand, has not done as well. His lies caught up with him, and he lost not only me but also Vanessa and his other family members. He's now alone, and while I feel terrible for him, I know it's a bet he made for himself. If there's one thing I've learned from this, it's that you have no control over what other people do, but you can control how you respond. I opted to turn my anguish into strength, and by doing so, I discovered a new sense of purpose. This event taught me that life is unpredictable, and even those you trust the most can betray you in ways you never expected. But it also demonstrated how strong I am and how resilient we can all be when confronted with adversity. If you've ever been through something similar, please share your experience in the comments. How did you manage it? Now to the next story. Story 2. My stepmother had hidden my late father's will, stealing my inheritance. Now that she came begging for help, I refused. My name is Lily Andrews, and I am 28 years old. My stepmother and younger sister, Rachel, and I live in the house that my late father bequeathed to us. My life has never been easy in our family, but I've always tried to sort things out for the sake of peace. That night, everything changed. It was a large party. My stepmother, Gloria, enjoys arranging these costly occasions despite her constant complaints about money. Guests packed the home laughing, drinking, and flaunting their pricey outfits. I remained to myself, standing near the kitchen and avoiding the spotlight like I normally do. Then something happened. Rachel, my 24-year-old sister, stood in the center of the living room. Her voice was loud enough to pique everyone's interest. "Oh, Lily is here. Look at her. Always hiding in the shadows as if she doesn't belong." Her words sliced into me like a knife. Some attendees laughed uneasily, unsure how to respond. My face flushed with shame, but I did not answer. Rachel understood how much I disliked confrontations. Gloria joined in before I could slip away. "Well, maybe Lily doesn't belong here. After all," she joked. "She doesn't contribute to anything important around here, unlike Rachel." Gloria smiled at the audience as if her comments were a joke. However, they weren't. I wanted to yell and protect myself, but I remained silent. No one knew I'd been surreptitiously paying Rachel's college tuition for the past 2 years. She wouldn't have had her expensive degree without me. And now she's disrespecting me in front of everyone. After the party, I returned to my room, hoping for some peace and quiet. But Gloria wasn't finished with me yet. She stormed in, her tone rough and cold. "You should pack your belongings and leave, Lily. This isn't your house anymore. You're just taking up space." I stood there frozen. How could she say that? My father left the house to me. But Gloria had always acted as if she owned everything. And Rachel took her lead for the first time in years. I did not fight or cry. I just looked at her and replied, "Fine, I'll leave." But in my heart, I knew it wasn't over. They were unaware of the sacrifices I had made for them. They had no idea that their remarks were pushing me to the point of no return. And they had no idea what I was going to do next. My mind raced as I packed my things. Every memory of Gloria and Rachel's mistreatment played back in my mind. The sarcastic remarks, the frequent comparisons, and the way they always took me for granted. As I closed up my luggage, I felt the weight of years of quiet sorrow lifted from my shoulders. This house might have been my father's gift to me, but it had become a prison. It was no longer a home before leaving. I went into my room and got the folder I'd concealed in the back of my closet. Inside were all of Rachel's college tuition receipts, proving all I had done for her. I was not going to let her forget it. As I approached the front door with my bag, Gloria and Rachel were seated in the living room, sipping wine and joking as if nothing had occurred. Rachel smirked when they spotted me. "Are you finally leaving? It took you too long," she replied, rolling her eyes. I paused in my tracks to look at her. My voice was calm but forceful. "You know, Rachel, I've always backed you. I funded your tuition when you couldn't afford it. So this is how you repay me?" Mocking me in front of everyone. Her face became pallid. "What are you talking about?" Rachel asked. I held up the folder and dropped it on the coffee table. "Here is the proof. Every money I made to keep you in school. You didn't know, did you?" Gloria told you that was her, right? Rachel looked at Gloria, her uncertainty rising to rage. You told me you were paying for it, she shouted. Gloria stood up and tried to maintain her composure. That is enough, Lily. Stop trying to create drama and simply leave. I shake my head. Oh, I am leaving. But from now on, you are on your own. I will not pay another dime for either of you. With that, I walked out the door, leaving them to face the truth. For the first time in years, I felt liberated. The next morning, I moved into a small but comfortable apartment on the opposite side of town. It wasn't a lot, but it was mine. I began focusing on myself for a change, working harder at my career, meeting new people, and caring for my mental health. Meanwhile, things in the old house began to fall apart. Rachel was unable to keep up with her college expenses and had to quit. Gloria attempted to guilt me into assisting them, but I ignored her calls. One day, Rachel texted me, Lily, I apologize for everything. Could we talk? I looked at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to forgive her, but another part of me understood that forgiveness did not imply returning to the way things were. I responded that we could talk, but I wouldn't let you take advantage of me again. When we eventually met, Rachel burst into tears. She stated that she had been jealous of me for many years. She thought Gloria's approval was all that counted, but she now realizes how toxic Gloria's influence was. I know I've hurt you, Lily, she admitted, her voice shaking. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to make things right. Rachel began working to repair our friendship. She really apologized and began working to pay her own way through school. For the first time in years, I recognized her as the sister I once cared about. Gloria attempted to persuade Rachel to turn against me again, but Rachel had finally seen her true colors. When Gloria realized she couldn't control us anymore, she fled town, leaving behind the toxic environment she had created. Rachel and I gradually rebuilt our relationship, this time based on respect and honesty. I maintained my distance, focusing on my own ambitions and pleasure. But I knew one thing for certain. I would never allow someone to take advantage of me again. Months passed before things felt normal again. I had settled into my new apartment, concentrating on my profession and creating a life that was not centered on my family's instability. Rachel and I were gradually restoring trust, and I admired her efforts, even if I wasn't ready to fully reintegrate her into my life. Then, one evening, when I was preparing dinner, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Hello? I responded hesitantly. Is this Lily Andrews? A forceful voice said yes. Who is this? This is Margaret Gray with Greenfield Law Offices. I'm calling about your late father's estate. My heart skips a beat. Estate. I thought everything was settled years ago. Margaret hesitated. Not everything. A situation involving your father's will has lately come to light. Would you be available to meet tomorrow? I agreed, but I couldn't shake the impression that this call was about more than paperwork. The next day, I sat in Margaret's office. Nervous? She handed me a bundle of documents. Her face is stern. Lily, your father left a second will, which was only recently discovered. Margaret's comments caused my heart to pound. This will override the previous one and include a significant inheritance. A trust fund intended for you. My thoughts raced a trust fund. Why didn't this come up before? It was deliberately hidden. Margaret explained we suspect Gloria hid it by claiming ignorance when the estate was first split. She probably didn't want you to use the money. I felt both angry and relieved my stepmother had stolen from me. But now I had the opportunity to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Can I access it now? I asked. Yes, Margaret replied with a smile. And I believe you'll find the sum substantial. Your father wanted you to be financially secure. When I saw the numbers, my jaw sank. The trust fund had more than $500,000. The trust fund became widely known, and Gloria soon returned. She arrived unannounced at my apartment, looking untidy and desperate. Lily, we need to talk. She continued, her voice quivering. There's nothing to talk about, Gloria, I said, maintaining a chilly tone. I know about the trust fund. She blurted out. You don't understand how hard things have been for Rachel and me. We need help. I looked at her incredulously. You mean the same Rachel you duped into turning against me? The same Rachel is finally learning to stand on her own without your toxic influence. Gloria's face flushed hot. I tried to safeguard this family. Everything I did was for Rachel's future. No, I replied firmly. You did everything for yourself. And you know what? I'm finished cleaning up your mess. Later that week, Rachel called me in tears. Gloria is furious with me, she continued. She thinks I betrayed her because I won't ask you for money. What do you want me to do, Rachel? I asked. Nothing, she said, her voice steady. I simply wanted to let you know that I am done with her. I'm moving out and starting a job. I do not want to be like her anymore. Her words astonished me. Rachel had finally accepted responsibility for her life. For the first time, I had a glimmer of optimism for our relationship with Gloria out of my life. I focused on building a future I could be proud of. I used a portion of the trust fund to start my own business, which I had been dreaming about for years. It wasn't easy, but it was mine, and it gave me a sense of purpose that I hadn't experienced before. Rachel and I stayed in touch and met for coffee or supper on occasion. She was becoming a better version of herself, and I was proud of her. Gloria. I had left for another city, leaving behind the damage she caused. I did not feel sorry for her. She had reaped what she sowed. Looking back, I understand that being kicked out of my own home was the finest thing that could have happened to me. It encouraged me to stand up for myself and stop allowing others to take advantage of my goodwill. Now, I live a life full of peace, purpose, and the assurance that I am finally free of my stepmother's toxic control. Thank you for joining me on my emotional journey. A tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and the power of reclaiming your truth. From the devastating moment I discovered my husband's secret family to the painful process of rebuilding my life. This story reminds us that even when trust is shattered and love is betrayed, we have the strength within us to rise above the pain. By facing the harsh truth with courage and resilience, I learned that our worth is not defined by the lies of those we once trusted, but by the power we find in ourselves to start anew. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring journeys. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and like the video to help us grow our community.